All right, excellent afternoon to all those who are watching us across the state in Nigeria. So welcome to another interesting episode of Real Talk Weekly. And I must go straight to the point because they say respecting the rule of law and a cornerstone of democracy, upholding rights and upholding rights and freedoms for all to see. Justice must prevail in a society where fairness and freedom, fairness and freedom is important. Again, I say welcome to another interesting episode of Real Talk with Kike. I remain your convener, Kike Atanda-Owo. And of course, I think it's important for me to quickly go to what on this day in history has for us today. Stay with me, I'll be right back.
On this date, July 18th, in 2015, Ekiti State Governor Mr. Ayodele Fayose condemned the invasion and sealing off of the Abuja and Sokoto residences of the immediate past National Security Advisor NSA, Colonel Sambo Dasuki, retired, by men of the Department of State Services, DSS. Fayose said the persecution of People's Democratic Party, PDP, stalwarts and others perceived as opposed to the All Progressives Congress APC federal government is an ominous sign of imminent return of dictatorship and draconian rule in Nigeria. Governor Fayose, who also condemned the persecution of Deputy Senate President Senator Kike Ekweremadu, said, "The desperate plot to remove Senator Ekweremadu from office is dangerous to democratic rule in Nigeria because there is no portion of the Nigeria's 1999 constitution that made positions of Senate President and Deputy Senate President the exclusive rights of the political party with highest number of senators."
All right, many thanks for staying with me. I just feel that, Fayose's remarks, underscored his concerns about the erosion of democratic principles and, of course, the potential abuse of power in Nigeria by, rising, or raising these issues. He sought to draw attention to what I would say, what was perceived to be threats to democratic governance and, of course, the need to protect constitutional rights and let's say political inclusiveness. I think that's my take on this day in history segment thus far. I think it's time for us to quickly get a quick message from the people who put you on this table. Stay with me, I'll be right back. Those are my sponsors. All right, many thanks for staying with me. In recent news, social economic rights and accountability project, that's SERAP, has given the Senate 7-day ultimatum for explanation on the palliative, while human rights activist Femi Falana-San has also described the 110 billion palliative allocated to the National Assembly as illegal and contemptuous. And of course, it remains surprising, this remains surprising to the people of Nigeria as to why the senators will make the budgetary spending of this magnitude or a priority, despite, the crunching conditions of the people in post-fuel subsidy removal crisis. We've all heard the news of the price in fuel today, but on the live show today, guys, I will be talking real talk. Yeah, this is real talk journey, with my guest on holding the government to accountability over the years and, of course, making bold demands on reversal of initiative tagged as anti-supportive of the Nigerian masses. And of course, before I delve for that, let me quickly unveil the profile of my guest. Let's play his profile, and the conversation will continue when I return. I'll be right back. Oluwadare, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today because I know that there are quite a number of things that you need to throw light on. So again, many thanks for honoring my invitation. But let me just quickly go straight to the conversation at hand because our discussion is in two folds. First of these, the 800 million World Bank palliatives, for post-subsidy hardship, on Nigerians, and the second one is the would I say 110 billion, palliative demanded by the Senate for this another palliative again. It's like the palliative are all over the place right now. So my first question to you right now is that as per the 800 million, the 800 million aid from the World Bank, Nigerians have said no cash disbursements. Could there be any reason for that, or could it be a form of trust issues that Nigerians don't have, they don't have trust for their government? How it works here in this country. And of course, I must ask you, with the fact that the government is saying that 8,000 naira will be given to 12 million citizens of this country. We know how the other previous palliative have worked, during the former President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. What's your take thus far with these no cash disbursements from Nigerians demanding from this present administration?
Thank you very much. It's very important to understand that SERAP's advocacy and our own perspective has always been about transparency and accountability. And we do have a lot of precedents and experience shared by most Nigerians about how governance has fared, and that is from the perspective of what the people has benefited. So when you look at this announcement, which came out even before this administration came in, which happened at the twilight of the previous administration, of the $800 million loan from the World Bank, we wrote the World Bank telling them to hold on to the disbursement of those funds, because we understand agreements have been signed. And of course, our request then was predicated on what we've seen of previous initiatives of so-called cash transfers towards poverty alleviation. Didn't just work. And a very good example, last year, and some years ago, that's 2021, the Nigerian administration then under President Muhammadu Buhari had stated that he had succeeded in lifting 100 million Nigerians out of poverty. Incidentally, that same week, the National Bureau of Statistics, which is an agency of government, by the way, brought out a report that more than 133 million Nigerians are poor. And so that shows clearly that that didn't work. And that is not surprising for anyone who has followed the progress of Nigeria in all these things. The lack of transparency and accountability in the management of public funds generally, of course, means that whatever we throw in, it's akin to throwing water in the basket. And again, most of these initiatives are more like knee-jerk reactions. They are not well thought out policy plans. One need not be an economist. You don't need to have a PhD in economics to understand that well thought out plans managed successfully can actually help. But in this instance, they are not well thought out. They are more reactionary.
But you know that the Senate president has cleared the air as per the loan savings, that they don't have interest in the World Bank and all of that in terms of the palliative. And the Senate Committee on Media and Public Affairs as well, that's Senator Yemi, I think Atanda-Owo or something like that. I apologize if I murdered the name. He explained that the 500 billion meant for fuel subsidy palliative was a different arrangement in totality from the disbursement of the $800 million that you just mentioned to 12 million vulnerable homes. So what exactly do you think are the grudges of SERAP? Let me put it like that.
It's basically the lack of transparency and accountability in management of public funds, and the fact that government has not prioritized, even though it says that from time to time, even during campaigns, has not prioritized the socioeconomic rights of Nigerians. And poverty is a key benchmark of that lack of socioeconomic rights in Nigeria. So in Nigeria we hear a lot of figures, either as part of our budgets or expenditure or by way of income. But the reality on ground doesn't reflect those figures. And that naturally means that people will ask questions. So whether the 500 billion is different from the 800 million loan for the World Bank, what matters is, what is this administration's plan for the spending of those funds? Is it well thought out? It is in line with the various laws that we have in Nigeria? And what are those transparency and accountability initiatives put in them to ensure that these funds do not go the way of previous funds? The Abacha loot is another case in point. These funds are coming in various tranches. But really, unless there are people who can say they've seen the benefit of this funds, we can't see them. And a very good example, again, is the 400 billion that is reportedly would have been saved from the subsidy removal that is for the month of June. Knowing fully well that the former president had said that the subsidy provision in the 2023 budget was just for 6 months, which is January to June. And then subsidy formally, according to the announcement by President Tinubu, was removed during his inaugural speech. So it means that we still have some savings, at least for the month of June, which may not necessarily mean funds that are kept in physical cash, but at least these are funds that would otherwise have been spent for subsidy. So the question is, which is the question the Serap asked the president, which is yet to answer up till now, by the way. What are the plans of government for those funds? How is it going to help the people? No answer yet. Yet we hear about supplementary bills before the National Assembly, which really might just go the wrong way again.
All right, many thanks for your insights right now. But, you know, I really want to keep bring you up to speed, because even when Nigeria understand that these monies are different, so to speak, you know, at this time of hardship, you know, is it befitting to disburse 70 billion to the newly elected members in addition to the 400 billion, you know, set aside for the purchase of their sports utility vehicles, you know, their SUVs and bulletproof cars all over the place? When I saw this on socials, I was like, God, I'm trying to understand why cash for principal officials and members, such money will be allocated to them when Nigerians are suffering. I'm telling you that most organizations today, they've started streaming down from saying don't come Monday to Friday anymore, come 3 times a week or 2 times a week, because there's no cushioning anywhere when it comes to incentives and the likes and all of that. And we are reading all of this on socials, in our media streams, about what they are disbursing money for with SUV. What's your take on this?
This happens every time there is an inauguration of a new National Assembly. And it happens not because Nigerians and Sarah Biden is speaking out against what we've seen as these malfeasance in governance. It's simply because those in position of authority just don't care. This happened with the last National Assembly, and it's happening again, which is why it's very important that we preface these conversations in a way that people understand that this is about governance, not about politics, and everyone must stand against this. It doesn't just make sense. It doesn't stand to logic. It doesn't stand to any sense of morality. Neither can it stand on law, even in economic principles. Why would the National Assembly need palliatives? And it's been said in some quarters that is for some sort of infrastructural development, which might not be true. But let's look at this in context. The National Assembly got the huge chunk. Again, they are not saying, and which again shows, for instance, when you look at in the 2023 budget, the National Assembly got a huge chunk of over 200 billion naira, which is by statutory transfer. And what this means by statutory transfer is that it goes to them in bulk. It means that for the budget of the National Assembly, we do not have that breakdown of line-by-line budget items, which means that as at the time the budget was passed, we do not know how much constitutes recurrent expenditure, which will be salaries and allowances, and how much is capital expenditure, which would be to the building and not so sort of things. So for all we know, 70% of that 200 billion might be recurrent expenditure, which again brings us to the fact that we do not know the present take-home pay of a member of the National Assembly. Yet, those members of the National Assembly, they are getting 70 billion. And again to ask, to question what? Against what? When the average Nigeria is poor, cannot really feed. The MBS just came out with the data for June to inflation rates, more than 20%. So why would they need to cushion the effect of poverty? If you ask me, what they need to be cushioned against is the backlash and the anger from the people for this kind of malfeasance. It just doesn't make sense. And that is beside the huge chunk of money they voted for themselves to buy what they've termed, and really, when I hear those terms, sports utility vehicles. Vehicles are vehicles, whether they're SUVs, the Jeeps or cars. The context, the present, the reality of our economy doesn't allow for such, not at all. And it's just insensitivity on the part of those in power, really.
All right, listening to you, you know, I'm asking myself, should we be giving them suggestions that when we have things like this, it's not about them, you know, trying to purchase cars. Maybe we should be giving them allowance, you know. At least they must have existing cars to come and serve the country, to come and serve Nigerians. But let me put that aside, because in contrast to what Femi Falana-Osan, you know, has also critiqued the legislators, you know, or for approving the sum of, I think, 500 billion for 12 million vulnerable people in a country where about, would I say, I stand to be corrected, about 2.9%, you know, percent of people, that's 133 million, you know, are poor. Whereas the lawmakers are having 110 billion for themselves, based on the calculation of what I've just said now. So what's your take thus far with all of this, and the fact that Femi Falana have also, you know, lent his voice to all the shenanigans that is going on in this governance?
You've said it all. More than 103 million Nigerians are poor. And then 500 people, less than 500 people, by the way, that's both houses of the National Assembly, are sharing 70 billion. And that's aside from the various, and we're not even talking, I have mentioned the chunk of their budget, which you do not even know how much is your current expenditure. So we do not even know. Talking of this, how can we marry that with the reality of what we have on ground? With the rising cost of living, the huge debt profile that continues to grow, and the appeal from governments as well for Nigerians to tighten their seatbelts. And then you wonder why those in power are not leading by example by setting the pace. And this is against the background of judgments of court, by the way, which has said that the National Assembly cannot fix its own allowances, that it is a RAM fact that can't do that. But in this instance, and we need to understand this is about transparency and accountability and its effect on governance, which in this case is bad governance. Nigerians deserve to know not only about the amount of the budget, we should know who is getting what, when, and how, and the progress of such expenditures. So right from early this year when the budget was passed and we do not know what is the breakdown of the budget in the National Assembly, of course that is wrong. And now this supplementary budget that gives them a whole lot of money to 70 billion naira and a paltry sum of 500 billion, so to speak, which again is not well thought out. What is the guarantee that this so-called palliative pay to 12 million families will really work and it will not end up in private pockets? And really, do you really think 8,000 naira to 12 million families within the space of 6 months to 1 year will bring anyone out of poverty?
My dear, can we further break it down? Because in my head, I'm just thinking that the callous and insensitivity of the decision of the members of this National Assembly, you know, constitutes a flagrant, you know, I don't know the word to use now, a flagrant contravention, because when you tailor it down to the rates, because I think it differs with different states now when it comes to consumption and how the 8,000 naira will cushion the citizens of Lagosians alone. Because I feel that from the news that I read yesterday, they said the high rise in the economy, whatever, in Lagos is higher than other states, correct? I'm sure that you must have seen something like that. So can you please, let's break it down. What can that 8,000 naira do for Lagosians? Not to talk of people in, maybe people in Borno or people in other states, it could help, because a plate of rice could be 200,000 naira for them and the northerners. You understand what I'm saying? Compared to us here. So how can we further, you know, drive the message? Because I feel that, I'm sorry to say this, you know, this is not me supporting any political party. I just feel they are insensitive right now to the state of the people. What's your take?
Which is why this advocacy must be consistent for the people to know that these actions of government is one of those knee-jerk reactions to economic policies. And it's also amounts to tokenism at the highest order, really. It looks like political tokenism in this instance. And that is why, is there any well-thought-out policy? Are there proofs, are there convincing arguments that government can profile while it thinks that 8,000 naira payment made monthly to 12 million families out of the multitude that are poor in Nigeria will really bring them out of poverty? I don't think so. And again, I'm not saying this as an economics. We've seen it happen over and over again. President Muhammadu Buhari used 8 years in office. He said the same thing. He even made claims that he has lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty. Absolutely. Yet the reports negate what he's saying. So what is this administration doing differently to show us that these payments will not only work and bring people out of poverty, that it will also not end up in private pockets? This government is just a demonstrator. So again, the man on the street doesn't need to be an economist to understand that the shoe is pinching him. And that is what we're talking about now. The government is being insensitive. These actions will not help Nigerians. It may at best maybe profit some private citizens who may profit from the lack of transparency and accountability in the management of those funds. So it isn't something that should be done. If at all, from the advocacy that we've done, we've written to the president on this matter, by the way. What should be done as part of the short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans is to invest in critical infrastructure. For instance, transportation that will cushion some of the effects of palliatives. Cash transfers have never worked in Nigeria, and I don't see it working. Not because it cannot work in economic terms, it is simply because the lack of transparent and accountability system
don't
means
you
it
think cash
won't work.
transfer is even better than giving you brown envelopes physically that they cannot trace? Because when it comes to documentation, at least cash transfer, they can say, okay, collate all the people that you've transferred money to, and we can see some level of transparency from there, compared to going to each homes and saying that they've given 12 million people 8,000 naira. Meanwhile, half of it or 60% of it has gone to their pocket. Which one is better?
Cash transfers, when I use the word transfer, it's not electronic transfer. Cash
okay.
transfer means transfer of wealth, of money. So it's still cash, which again subjects it to this question of this. How can we trace this? Nigeria claims to have a register of the poorest of the poor. What are the indices, the metrics of arriving at those poorest of the poor? And perhaps can we have access to those registers to really confirm that these people exist? And then sometimes when this kind of advocacy is made, it's easy to think it's political or it's not well thought out. But really, we've seen this happen too many times for these important questions not to be asked. And that is why it is not about the amount of money we throw into these poverty alleviation schemes. It is the genuineness and the commitment of government to do what is right, and first and foremost demonstrate that by being transparent and accountable throughout the process. Secondly, for those in power to lead by example, cutting the cost of governance. And we have not spoken about the pension laws that more than 20 states in Nigeria for former governors and deputy governors. We have not started speaking about security votes, which is placed nearly across board to most public institutions, the heads of those institutions. We have not even started speaking about double emolument. That is for those who were formerly governors and deputy governors in their states, who are now members of the National Assembly, and some of them also will become ministers when the ministerial list finally comes out. This is just a huge drain on the resources of the country, which leaves little or nothing to bring anyone out of poverty.
Many thanks for your elaborate submission. We'll go on a quick break, and when we return, the conversation will continue. Stay with me. I'll be right back. Alright, glad to know you are still with us. In case you just joined the show, today's conversation, has been with Mr. Kolawole Oluwadare, the Deputy Director of Social and Economic Rights and Accountability Project, that is SERAP. Of course, he has been throwing light on about the serious discussion on the 110 palliatives, set aside for the senators, and of course many other conversations regarding the Federal Republic of Nigeria and what the citizens need to know in terms of awareness. I feel that, like we were saying before we came back on air, that the youth of today, they need to, really be, on their feet to learn or to read more, basically, so that you can, we can keep you up to speed. Instead of you just typing away certain things on social media, it goes beyond socials. That is what I think that the youth of today, we need to continue to drive the awareness or message to them. But before we go further, I think it's important for me to quickly, open the phone lines. Remember, you can be part of this conversation by calling the studio number 080-988-77400, showing on your screen right now. And of course, we're streaming live from Facebook and on YouTube, both on Real Talk with Kike and of course on Silverbird platform as well. And I must say many thanks, Oluwadare, for all that you've shared thus far. It's very informative. I wish that government are actually listening and actions will be taken, because there's hardship. There's so much hardship in town. I don't even want to talk about the fuel subsidy. When it comes to food as well, quite a number of different sectors are being affected right now. But moving away from all that you've shared thus far, I want to touch on the Section 70. I want to sound like my husband now. Section 70 of the amended Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That's the 1999 Constitution that stipulates that a member of the Senate or the House of Representatives shall receive such salary and other allowances from the revenue mobilization, mobilization allocation, and maybe commission that will be determined for them to get such allowances. If there are no checks and balances, with all that you've shared thus far, that there's no transparency, nobody to hold accountable to how they spend money, the inflow and outflow and the likes, talking about different infrastructures and the likes. So who checkmates, English want to fail me now on this issue of our economy, who checkmates the excesses of our lawmakers with all that you've shared thus far?
It's not, things are happening like this. These events are happening not because there are laws are weak. Of course, laws are not meant to be perfect. That's why they are reviewed from time to time as tools of social engineering. The issue has always been the lack of adherence to principles of the rule of law. And this impunity continues to bring negative consequences. So let's look at democracy as a concept and relate it to what we have presently in view of the fixing of salaries for members of the National Assembly. The principle of separation of powers creates three distinct sets: the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive. It doesn't mean there should be a loggerheads or they should fight, but it means that there are powers and such that one is not more powerful than the others. But in a situation where the judgments of court by the judiciary is disobeyed at will by the executive, which message are you sending to the legislature? In cases where the legislature fixes its own fee, its own salaries, and doesn't even ascribe, doesn't make it known to people, which message the legislature sends to the executive? Exactly. And so these are those upsets in the balance of things that invariably speaks to bad governance, and the people, unfortunately, bear the consequences. So the provisions of the Constitution that created the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation, and Fiscal Commission, the drafters of the Constitution knew what they were doing. It is to make sure that RAMFAC, as it is called, is that objective independent organization that can fix salaries of even both executive and the judiciary, and even the legislature in this instance. But like I've mentioned earlier, it is not about what RAMFAC recommends for the members of the National Assembly. It is that I've mentioned that in the 2023 budget, the huge chunk of funds allocated to the National Assembly is not broken down. So we do not even know out of that 200 billion how much is recurrent expenditure, how much is capital expenditure. And don't forget, 2 years ago, SERAP was, and the matter is still in court as I speak, by the way. SERAP went to court to challenge the National Assembly that allocated 30 billion naira to fix the National Assembly complex. Now the question is that part of the budget for that year? The same National Assembly has received 70 billion now as palliatives, and some people are saying it is for the infrastructure development of the National Assembly. So again, lack of that transparency means even if RAMFAC recommends 1 million naira, but those monies can still be taken from the statutory transfer of the National Assembly. It means we still do not know what to take home pay of the National Assembly, which is why the advocacy should be for transparency and accountability and for good governance. And I need to say this is very important, that this advocacy shouldn't be tainted with politics. Tribe and religion should not come to play in this kind of advocacy. And we've seen that happen a lot in Nigeria. When we talk of good governance, we bring in these several factors, and it doesn't help anyone. All right,
I will talk about the cultural aspect of this, but there's something that came to mind while we were talking, because I know that SERAP have challenged the government back to back. You know, your organization have challenged the government based on, I think, Section 18 of the Constitution of Nigeria, that governments shall, you know, ensure that what's it called now? Shall ensure that there's equal and adequate, you know, educational opportunities. Earlier, I was talking about where all the sectors are being affected, but I want to really touchlight the educational sector now, because as far as I'm concerned, I feel that the educational opportunities at all levels is key. But the government shall also strive to eradicate illiteracy, was what this section also said, and must come to an end. So let me bring it to fore. Government shall provide a free, compulsory, and universal primary education. But as at today, Oluwadare, do you think these palliatives, you know, shall be channeling this sector, this educational sector, this critical sector? Because I feel that the educational sector is very critical for the economy of today. What's your take on this thus far?
Which is why in the letter we wrote to the president last week, we had asked the members of the National Assembly, we also wrote to the president. What we asked the president to do was to withdraw the supplementary bill, the appropriation bill he approved for the National Assembly, and present a fresh supplementary appropriation bill, redirecting the 40 billion naira allocated in the National Assembly and the 70 billion allocated as palliative National Assembly to fund to address this issue of out-of-school children. And we also asked the National Assembly. Of course, they have the powers, the oversight. This is not oversight. They have the direct statutory powers to review the bills, the money bills in this instance submitted before them, to redirect those spendings, to address the growing out-of-school numbers of out-of-school children, which as at today stands at 20 million. In 2019, it was 13 million. Now it's 20 million, and that is worrisome. We're talking of insecurity in several parts of Nigeria, and it is spreading. It's not only in the northeast; it is spreading to all parts of Nigeria. And this also speaks to employment and other negative vices, which is why we've told the National Assembly and the President to redirect the spending. and that the supplementary appropriation bill, which has been passed, of course it can be amended as many times as possible, should be directed to spending. You have mentioned a very critical aspect of the provision of our laws, which forms part of the corpus of socio-economic rights. Government shall, and it's a mandatory imperative. But again, what we've seen is not that the laws are not there. It is always this penchant to break the laws. Sometimes explain them away, and no one gets punished for it. Serap has gone to court too many times asking for government to obey the laws and to do what is right, but nothing gets done. So it's not because education is not important, it's not because health is not important, it's simply because government knows what to do, the law is clear, they simply do not do it.
They've not prioritized that, if you ask me. But, you know, with what you've shared us far, you know, earlier you mentioned culture, and I feel that, you know, we seem to promote a culture of wastage and frivolous expenses, if you ask me, with all that you've shared thus far, and looking at the pattern, you know, of the people who put in the corridor of power today. So those are one of the arguments, if you ask me, of Peter Obi during his presidential campaign, you know, because on this platform we brought almost all the presidential candidates, and I know that that was one of the things that it was, channeling energy on. So is it every term, or after every 4 years we will be allocating billions of naira to cars and furnitures and all of that? What happened to previous allocations and the previous furnitures that was used for previous furniture allowance that was used by the previous government that can continue if nothing is wrong with it? Should I speak my language so that they will know that I look like you? What's your take on this?
Because I've always wondered, when I first heard the term furniture allowance, the kind of wood for which the furniture was made. Is it a piece of the true cross? I've always wondered, why is it so expensive? Again, it's not for furniture, it's just an avenue for which public funds can be used to the benefit of private individuals who are public officers. That is just another instance of impunity. And again, these things will not end until Nigerians recognize that this advocacy needs to be stepped up to ensure that, again, this has nothing to do with politics. It doesn't matter who is the majority or minority in the National Assembly. It is ensuring, and which again speaks to the fact that it is ensuring that those funds being allocated in national by way of appropriation are put to good use. But again, we as Nigerians, we've come to expect what is happening at the National Assembly presently. The debate about furniture, it happens every 4 years at inauguration. And it would appear that the lessons are yet to be learned by the public, and I mean the right holders, the citizens, and the duty bearers, those in the public office holders, to understand the duties, the rights and obligations of both sides of the power spectrum in a democracy. Which is why we continue to have conversations like this. But most importantly, the members of the National Assembly have constituents who voted for them to represent the National Assembly. So these conversations like these are meant to stimulate those people. I have someone representing me in the National Assembly to ensure that calls are made to these individuals to make sure that they vote to represent the interests of members of their constituencies. But if we limit our advocacy and our activism, if I call it that, to pre-election, or who gets what and when they get into office, then we're not going to get the benefits of good governance.
All right, many thanks for that. I think I just want to touch on the National Assembly leader. This might be my closing question for this section, because under section 16, subsection, okay, I understand that we have a caller from Lagos, Chinedu, many thanks for calling. What's your contribution on the topic at hand? Chinedu, can you please speak a little bit louder? Yes. All right, apologies. I think we lost that call. So, because when you're talking about House of Assembly, I just felt, the National Assembly rather, I just feel that I need to touch on this subsection 16, of National Assembly that has the obligation to harness, the resources of the nation and promote, national prosperity, so to speak, and of course the efficiency of when it comes to the dynamics and self-reliance of the economy at the moment. We know the state of the economy at the moment. So I must ask you, how do we secure the maximum welfare, the freedom, the happiness of every citizen? Forget Nigerians, no matter the kind of challenges we face, we still find ourselves, trying to, make ourselves happy. I think it's a spiritual thing, so to speak. Even when people are suffering and smiling, you know, one way or the other, maybe it's the hospitality, you know. So do you think that the Senate, is my question, is fulfilling this obligation even with the fact that the new administration has just, you know, started? What's your take on it, so that it's not just look as if we are just gaslighting them?
Of course, no. I do not believe that the 10th National Assembly, which the actions they've taken thus far, is promoting the welfare of Nigerians. And it's very clear in the Constitution. Section 15 clearly says that the primary purpose of government is the security and the welfare of the people. And Chapter 2 of the Constitution also provides a lot of mandatory obligations on the part of government as to what should be the benefit that the citizens get from them. But this is not happening. Unfortunately, it's not happening. It's not too late, though. And so they've had less than 2 months in office. And they're just this simple action of allocating 40 billion naira to themselves to buy cars. How can that be said to be the interest of Nigerians? Yes, they have more than 3 years to go to prove otherwise to Nigerians. But that starts from now. First and foremost, reallocate the spending to the critical sectors in the education to address the growing number of out-of-school children, and ensure that every action of the National and Including Public Funds is transparent.
All right, many thanks again, Luadari, for all that you've shared thus far. I say thank you so much for creating time to be on the platform today on Real Talk with Kike. At least you're spending your lunchtime with me. All right, so, all right, before I let you go, there's a last segment of the show that I call the trending story. These are stories that affect you and I as Nigerians. And I think the first trending story that caught my attention is that of there will be anarchy in Nigeria if you nullify by election. President Tinubu tells Tribunal. And I think before I come to you, you know, honestly, I just feel that there's no need for anarchy in this country. Yes, this is not me taking sides or making my submission based on political affiliation or sentiment. I just feel that this statement here is rather undemocratic, if you ask me, or will I say illegal. Yeah, that's the word. It's so illegal on the basis of law, merit, and of course, you know, what's it called, transparency. I feel that we must accord the law, and there must be rule of law. Rule of law must remain. You know, it must remain greater even than any persons or party within a state. So it is the law that also has placed the president at the office in the first place, even while there is an ongoing tribunal issues at the moment. So if that same law allows you to remain in the office, even after the back and forth based on the contentions of Abuja being the 36th state, you know, and the majority of votes based on the constitution. So I said to myself, why can't you let the law prevail? So hey, there's no need for anarchy. Secondly, the fact that I want to touch on the fact that I feel that as a president, certain words as leaders, you know, as people that were put in the corridor of power, you know, to bring some level of sanity to our country, certain words like that should be avoided. Words like anarchy can trigger, uprising and all sorts of crises, you know, based on political differences and ethnic polarization, if you ask me, for lack of a better word right now. So I feel that, you know, it's so undemocratic for him to say that because of who he is and the position he is and the seat that he's sitting as the president. So he should stand up for fairness, you know, democratic rule of law. He should continue to say, I'm going to be the one that would actually support the democratic rule of law. And the importance of this is the fact that I feel that leaders must show some sense of respect, you know, for the rule of law as well, and our democracy, you know, because there's a greater sense of trust from the people and the higher capacity to win the supported, you know, or the support of the people rather, you know, than for us to now start thinking that we must govern by force and the likes. No. The last perception for me as the leader is the fact that I feel that people like him, you know, should give the people some level of peace, you know, especially again when it comes to nobody is above the law. Because I feel that in this country that we are today, there's so much bigmanism and the likes and all of that. I'm not contesting the legitimacy of the president, I must put it out there, or not attacking any political sides, but I'm just stating that let's always allow the law to prevail, and there should be no need for incitement of the people and the likes and all that, so that peace can reign. We need peace in our country. It's bad enough that there's so many challenges in our country at the moment when it comes to different sectors. You know, I don't want to even talk about the fuel subsidy because that has affected everything, plus food, but light, and all of that. But so the last thing that the only thing that the people are requesting for now is peace. Can we please measure our thoughts when we are speaking in public? I think that's my submission on this trending story. What's your take on this?
I'd rather not comment on the what is the proceedings before the Presidential Electoral Panel, since it's a matter of litigation presently. But I do agree that we need peace in Nigeria. Yeah,
we need peace in Nigeria. Many thanks for emphasizing on that. So because this affects us all, however we look at it. So the second trending story for me is the fact that we're banned again. They banned Nigerians because of drug trafficking and fraudulent activities from Seychelles. I've been to Seychelles, and I've been there twice. It's a beautiful place when it comes to nature. But however, let me quickly say this. I don't know how to say it. How do I say it in our normal day-to-day language? Can we say our life outside? Who do us? I'm sorry. I don't have to be real like that. Who do us now? Because this is where we have gotten ourselves to. A small tourist resort island country, banning a giant of Africa. You know, the most populous black nation. You know, I cannot keep going on and on. I'm like,
what's the reason for the ban? What's the reason for the ban?
You know, the reason for the ban is the fact that they said because of fraud and of course drugs and all of that. So in my head, I'm just thinking aloud. You know, coming from our country, the basis of drug trafficking and of course illegal fraudulent activities and all that. So let's remind ourselves again. For those people who have forgotten, don't forget that UAE banned also. UAE and banned Nigerians because of the conduct of some of our, will I say, nefarious or what's the word, all these sinful Nigerians in their country and other bilateral relationship issues, that went on between us. I just want to say this from two angles. Because talking about bilateral, I just feel that the bilateral and the trade relations is also key for me to bring to fore. Because the only trade and commodity Seychelles is selling selling to the world is the large quantity in the tourism to Nigerians, and one of the highest patronizers, if that English is correct, somebody should tell me, a patronizer of their country for tourism because of the ease of entering without visas, and of course, I stand to be corrected if a country is making money off Nigeria every time, and we go to the island and we are saying that no, they don't want us to come again. You are not welcome. What does that mean? It means that they have weighed their pros and cons, and they have done their cost-benefit analysis. You are talking about the inflow and income earlier and all of that. I like money a lot, so I work hard, I apply myself. So I'm saying to myself that for Seychelles, so I said, don't come again. They've put all their cons on the table and they've weighed the pros and cons. They're saying to ourselves that we don't need this country. They don't think that they need us, and that's the worst of allowing the country to come to a place where they are saying that they don't need us, despite the fact that there's a revenue coming from our own tourist visitation to their country. What does that say? I wish our leaders can learn from this. And from the second angle is the fact that I feel that it's telling us to put our house in order. Let's put our house right, and let's be better off in conducting ourselves when we are outside our country, because we can't continue to be the scapegoat of other small countries like Seychelles. Yes, I love Seychelles. So the 2 times I went there, I just go there and go and sit at the beach of this. And the fact that my hotel was attached to the sea, to the ocean and all, I love the view, I love nature, and that's the first country that I will go to that I'm not doing any buying, running from one mall to the other, from one shop to the other. So I love the calmness of the country. I'm so pained when I saw this, that they banned the whole Nigeria from not coming. It's a shame. Nigeria is a big shame. A small country not to allow us, 1/10 of our population alone. Do you know how much they are making? Gosh, I can do the math. Just a little above 100 according to the 2021 population of their country. So you know what, it's just so sad for me that they can even do that. So that's the second country. Let me now quickly touch on the third angle before they start running commentary in my ears. I must say this one, you know, is that we should also build our country. You know, we should also improve our tourism. You know, there should be, you know, less reliance on other countries. This is key message to our leaders, and I feel that we must take a cue from this. In 30 seconds, what do you have to say? These people, they start running commentary in my ears, but we must say this thing.
But ideally, these things happen in international politics and international business. I'm sure these might not be the final decision. It can be reviewed again, probably possibly for economic terms.
For economic, it's a sad chat. How can that small country Seychelles ban us?
It's like it's personal.
It's like I'm taking it personal. It's like a slap on our face. And you need to go to Seychelles. It's a beautiful small country. But we need to put our hands in order. Nigerians, we've come to the end of another interesting episode of Real Talk with Kike and Kotsi. Our resourceful guest, Oluwadare Kolawole. Many thanks for joining live. You know, thank you for continually, you know, advocating for peace, advocating for transparency and accountability in a country where quite our leaders are actually. I hold my thoughts. My name is Kike Atanda-Owo. This is very jolly episode. Till I come your way on Thursday, remember to catch me live on Inspiration FM 92.3 tomorrow at 5 p.m. Let's drive the conversation there and remain kind to one another. Bye now.